Thank you, Natalie. So now our next speaker is Dr. Giacomo Basadonna. He's the Director of Global Medical Affairs Division of CMC Consulting. And in addition, he's also a tenured professor at the University of Massachusetts and Yale University Schools of Medicine. He's a fellow of the American College of Surgeons, Director of the UMass Organ Transplantation Division, and Yale University Pancreas and Isolate Transplantation Services. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Giacomo Basadonna.
Hi, good evening. I don't have slides, and it's the first time probably in my life I give a talk without slides. The reason why I don't have slides is because what I have to tell you, what they told me to tell you, is depressing, sad, not exciting, and nobody's going to want my address at the end of the presentation, because my topic tonight is to explain why, when we review grants, we turn them down. So what are the pitfalls? And so I represent the devil. Despite the fact that I applied myself for many grants in my career, and I have to say that the rate of acceptance was pretty low. So it's not easy to get grants. I think overall NIH has a rate of funding of about 10 or 12%, maybe 13 sometimes.
For academics, a little higher for small business.
Yeah, for small business it's higher. That's the good news. But still means that 9 out of 10 of the grants submitted are turned down. So it is a very competitive environment, and the pool of money is not getting any bigger. So I currently review grants. I have reviewed grants for a long time, but currently I review for NIH at the NIAID, which is the institute that is dedicated to allergy and infection diseases, and actually organ transplantation happens to be in that area. Tendentially, we do not see SBIR grants. I've seen them before in my life, but not currently. But I think some of the things I'm going to tell you probably apply to most of the grants application. And actually, I brought with me, and if you want to see it, I'm happy to share it. It's available, on the web. It's actually titled "Common Mistakes in Writing Application." It's published by the NIH, so it is available to everybody. Now, the 5 main criteria that we follow when we look at a grant, and we really need to actually write a spill on each one of this topic, is a significance, approach, innovation, investigator, and environment. And they are written in this because we like to think that significance is the most important thing. But frankly, the last 2, the environment and the investigator, carry a tremendous amount of weight. So it is easier, and I think Natalie will probably agree with me, it is easier for somebody who received funds before to get funded again. Yes, it's unfortunately a rule of the game. Usually there are 3 reviewers for every grant, and when the first reviewer opens the discussion saying, I would like to talk about this grant, the title is so-and-so, and this is actually, the PI is Joe Smith, and everybody says, oh yeah, Joe Smith, he's a great guy, we already funded him for 30 years. That is already a foot into the door. So to have as a PI, even in SBIR, a person that has some track record of maybe having published something in that field, or have to be known a little bit in that field certainly helps. And if this is the second SBIR that this person gets, certainly very important. The second, I think this is a very good advice that we realize the importance of every time, is every grant starts with an abstract. That is the key to open the door. Every reviewer will read the abstract first, and sometimes that's the only thing that they read, because they have 30 grants to review, they have a week of time, and during the day they have a day job. So the abstract is fundamentally important. If you don't capture the reviewer interest in the abstract, it's an uphill battle after that. So not only the abstract has to be, there are only that many words you can put, it's directed by the funding agency, but you have to try to put in there everything that will capture the interest of whoever is going to read it. You have to, again, imagine yourself at the end of a very busy day in which you have about 15 grants to read, and so you have to try to keep them awake and keep them interested. So just to focus a lot of attention on the abstract. I think you would agree with that. Unfortunately, and I know it's probably not fair, but sometimes, if the abstract is dull or is confusing and you really don't get what the point of the grant is, what they're trying to accomplish, what is this technology going to do in a case of an SBIR, is a lost cause after that. Significance. So this was the first one of the most important review criteria. The application has to be novel. There gotta be something in there that is novel, that is almost like when we write a paper. Nobody can publish a good paper using old data. So the application has to contain a degree of novelty. So the technology has to have something that is not present yet. The idea of the project has to be new. Sometimes when we read the abstract and the first pages, we realize that although maybe the title was captivating on the grant, there is a lack of rationale overall. So like Natalie said earlier, the grant has to follow, it has to make sense. So I want this amount of money to do X, Y, and Z. If the rationale is not there, and the rationale has to jump out at the very first beginning, it usually is not a good sign, and it will decrease the score. And at the end of the day, it's all about the score. Now, approach. Approach is important. So you have to have a novel idea, and you have to show why is it important. Third, you're going to describe, okay, how am I going to get from A to B? What am I going to do with the money? So the approach. A very important point. After we pass the abstract, we look at the aims. This is what we want to do. 1, 2, 3. Don't list 15 aims because it's just confusing. Just 2 or 3, but they have to be very clear, very concise, to say I'm going to use the money to achieve 1, 2, 3 points. So the aims are fundamentally important. Usually there is a title for the aim, and after that a brief paragraph that explains a little bit. Don't spend pages on it, also because you don't have pages of time. Pages of space. There are 2 pitfalls on the approaches. Some people spend an incredible amount of details on the approach, so people get lost because there are so many. It's so convoluted and so complicated that you don't really, at a certain point, you forgot. You have all these different things are going to happen and you don't remember. Or vice versa. Sometimes people are. It's a common mistake I made many times myself. We have a very clear path. The technology, the idea makes perfect sense to us because we came up with that, but we are not able to convey that information to whoever is going to review the grant. So there got to be enough details for people to understand and not too much that they get lost into the review. I think one of the important, although for the SBI grant this might not be as important, but you have to show that you already done something with this with the idea. It is very difficult to. The worst thing that people can say at this point is say, "Well, this is a good idea, but it is a fishing expedition." There's always somebody that says those magic words. That's it. That's because people don't realize really. Is there any base for what you are proposing? So some preliminary data, something that shows maybe a publication in the past. If it's, we often see. I read a lot of SBIR in my old days that had to do with new molecules and new pharmaceuticals. Usually those come from academia often. So there has been a couple of papers published. There is a trend to show that patients will benefit from something like this. It's going to move this protein from here to here. It's going to improve this pathway. And so people say, okay, there is something there that you're basing your request on. So preliminary data of some kind are very important. One thing that there are obviously some other issues there. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because we don't have it. But I think it's very important when you write a grant, no matter what it is, if it's more academic or more business related, tell the reviewers what could go wrong. I think that's very important. So you can say, I am going, the regulatory process for this medical device, for example, is going to be a 510K. But there is a possibility they might become a de novo, it might become a PMA. So tell them, tell the reviewers that these things could go wrong. There is something that, and so what do you do in that case? So if this does not work, if this, I am not able to, I'm going to go around and achieve my goals in a different way. Very important because, this is the government giving you maybe a couple of $1 million, and they want to make sure that you don't drop it in the middle of the game because you don't have plan B. And interestingly, it's very difficult to give back the money to the funding agency, almost impossible, I think. And so the good news is that when you get the money, it's yours. The NIH doesn't have a process actually to get you the money back. They might stop the funding in the next grant by now comes. So they assume that once you are funded, you're worth the money. So, but that comes also from the realization that you have thought through the process, and sometimes from A to B, might not work, but you got a way around the problem. So I think that's very important. We rarely fund grants that they don't have an analysis of potential pitfalls. And I think Natalie mentioned that earlier, budget. Budget is fundamentally important. It has to be detailed. The worst thing is when you read a grant and you realize that the investigator says, just give me the money, don't worry about it, I know how to do it. That's really a bad feeling. So, right? The expenses have to be justified, travel has to be justified, presentation has to be justified, and particularly salaries has to be justified. So if your PI for the SBIR has already 80% of his time dedicated to other things, you don't want to put 50% of his salary on that grant, because we read that stuff and we're very careful about that. So, the worst, feeling is again that you're trying to pull the wool over the reviewer eyes, and that's not a good feeling. So budget has to be detailed, it has to be very well described. And two quick words about the investigator and the environment. The environment is also important. You have to convey and I think Natalie mentioned, there got to be a structure. You cannot be a virtual company, and certainly you cannot be a virtual laboratory. So, you have to have enough people to justify the work that you're going to ask money for. So there's got to be a place that will be where people work in an environment that they can perform the things that you say that you're going to do. So if you say you're going to manufacture X, Y, and Z, there got to be a plan there, there got to be an address, so there got to be somebody that's going to be the manufacturing, and so on. So the environment is important. And the investigator is the last thing I want to say 2 words about it. The person that is either the PI is legally responsible for how the money is going to be used. And so the description, the CV of this person, past experience, like I said earlier, and particularly the past experience with funding agency or governmental structures, I think is very important. So I personally will spend some time in conveying the information that the person that is asking for the money is worth, receiving it. And it's all subjective, but there are a lot of people on this review panel, so they really are very sticky about that. And I'll stop here because I think sometimes answering questions, it's easier. So if you have any question, please let me know. Thank you.